Sam Adams, Sam Adams, Sam Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Franklin, Benjamin Franklin. These men spoke up for what they thought was right. From their courage came such documents as the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution of the United States. From their willingness to speak what was sometimes unpopular but right, we enjoy such liberties as freedom of speech, the right to keep and bear arms, and freedom of religion. There are those who still wish to oppress our freedoms, and there are still patriots willing to stand up and defend life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Men like Zeb Bell, who honor our founding fathers and what they stood for. It's now time for Zeb at the Ranch, speaking up and defending your freedoms. Brought to you by Magic Valley Les Schwab Tire Centers and all of the other great advertisers on the program. And now, Zeb Bell.
Right now, live each day with courage. We need to be tough and self-assured that God is in control. Stick your chin out and keep on going. Here comes Kate Smith and God Bless America, followed by a Patriot to call in with our Pledge of Allegiance. Come on, Patriots, be proud. Good morning. And a good morning to you and yours. Zeb at the Ranch. I'm Zeb Bell, and welcome to our Tuesday edition of our program, brought to you by Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. And our friends at Greystone Crossing Senior Living at 1221 21st Street in Heyburn. Seniors living the good life with friends. Right now, let's go to the phone line and have our Pledge of Allegiance. Good morning.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Very well done, my dear friend Randy. Call me back in a little bit anyway. I want to talk to you more. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Thank you. Right now, ladies and gentlemen, time for the weather. We kick things off every morning with the weather forecast brought to you by K&R Rental at 256 South, 600 West of Heyburn. Yep, right there on the Burley Paul Highway. Hello, Roger and the crew. They've got everything. You know what? I think we're going to have a great forecast for some spring weather. We're going to find out about it in a minute. If that's the case, they've got all your garden and lawn equipment over there. You need power rakes, all the garden and lawn equipment like rototillers. You better believe it. You better get over there and check it out with Roger and the crew at K&R Rental. Questions? Give them a call, 678-3122. Right now, here's the weather.
Sunshine for the rest of the week, which is going to do the soul some good. Here's a look at your weather forecast for the day. We are expecting sunny skies. Slight breeze out of the south-southwest at about 8 miles an hour. Turning to the west by this afternoon, we are expecting a high of 61. Tonight, mostly clear skies with a low of 35. Tomorrow, another beautiful day. Sunny skies with a high of 60. Overnight low of 35. By Thursday, sunny and 68, maybe 70 for Friday. That's a look at your weather forecast for Zeb at the Ranch.
Woo! I love that. Shazam, Gober used to say, or Goober used to. No, who was it? Gober or Goomer used to say that? I think it was Gomer Pyle on Andy of Mayberry. Shazam. I love it. Weather forecast brought to you by K&R Rental. It's currently 37 degrees outside, and K&R Rental on the Burley Paul Highway. And like I said, they've got the best of tools and equipment for your rental for both long and short term. You better get a hold of them today. And again, if you're not sure what you need before you stop in, give them a call, 678-3122, K&R Rental. Want to also kick things off this morning by saying howdy, just to, like Minnie Pearl used to do. I've been watching some of those old Opry reruns from 70 years ago. Wow. And Minnie Pearl, Grandpa Jones, and the rest of them. Kind of neat to watch that. Don't forget Daryl's Cleaners at 1223 Albion Avenue in Burley. And believe me, they can take care of all your dry cleaning needs. They are the best at what they do. That's not brag, that's a fact. And of course, they can also help you with your washing of your clothes. They'll wash, dry, fold, and iron all your clothes, just like Mama used to. you at Daryl's Cleaners, 1223 Albion Avenue in Burley. You stop in and see them today, Daryl's Cleaners. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Well, good morning, Zeb.
Yes, sir.
You know, I just realized that Nancy and I are coming down with cabin fever.
Uh-huh.
Do you and Deanne have the same problem?
I think I said this on the air a couple of days ago, but regardless of whether I did or not, we are sociable. We are trying our best to be compatible. But if you see a puff of smoke, worry about it.
Well, you know, when it rains, that's when it's the toughest time. But when it's nice out, we have, just like you and Deanne have, we have a beautiful yard. And that occupies our time. But, you know, getting back to the realization of things, how many people, elderly people that have died, did have an, flu shot? What would you say?
How many people have died without a flu shot? Is that what you're asking?
Well, I mean percentage-wise.
Oh, I don't have any idea. All I'm going to say is this. I am not going to compare the coronavirus with various and certain strains of the flu. I do not feel like I or anyone else behind a microphone really has that knowledge. Let's leave it to the medical scientists to come up with a final net result on that. All I'm going to say is I hope and pray that medical science is doing something right now that is going to, in the next few short months, May, after April, June, July, August, and early September, before it starts getting cold again and going into flu season, I hope they have something that can be verified and solidified to give to the American public so we don't have to go through this again.
Well, the only thing that I would like to see and tell the right numbers, I never hear them say anything about how many people have died with just the regular flu or a bad cold or whatever. I think they're putting it all in one pot and calling it carnivorous or not carnivorous.
The coronavirus. I asked about that yesterday with some of my guests that were on, and they're very knowledgeable, Rick Manning being one of them, from right back in the Washington, D.C. area. And I don't think that we can make that assumption without having bona fide fact. As you know, on this program, I'm a real stickler for if it's not proven, we ain't going to promote it because we want to have only facts. And so I'll leave it at that.
Well, and I appreciate you for that. And I had listened to that yesterday, and I think he is a really good man that can come out and tell it like it is.
Well, I appreciate it. And, I want to get into a little bit of what's going on with the coronavirus this morning and also the World Health Organization. But every day I can count on you. Thank you, Keith. Appreciate you. Broke the ice. Don't fall through it, buddy. Have a good day.
You do the same.
All right, thank you. I want to remind you, too, but my robin is back this morning. If you hear in the background a thunk, 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 that's that doggone robin. I cleaned it up a little bit, and he is absolutely going back and forth across the bottom of my windowsill right behind me, just going thunk, 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 and he's there every day. He's driving me nuts. Ramsey Heating and Electric at 2600 Overland Avenue in Burley. Number to call, 678-0459. They're open 7:30 to 5, Monday through Friday. And it goes without saying the word all. All is the key word. They have all your heating, cooling, and electrical needs. Plus, they have all the best of people serving you and all the knowledge and the experience. They've been in business for over almost 7 decades. Holy cow. They are good. They are good. Providing warm winters and cool summers. Ramsey Heating and Electric in Burley. Really, really good people. Calls are welcome and appreciated. 436-2244, 1-866-927 4587. At 8:30 this morning, my old compadre Wheels over at the station is going to get on the phone line and have Cassia County Clerk Joe Larson on our program. So we're going to be talking to him just a little bit about the May 19th primary vote by mail, so be sure and tune that in. Want to remind you, too, about Dino's Septic Service. Yes, they have expanded their business. I mean, expanded to better serve more people. They know you've got problems, maybe through the winter and now going into spring, where your septic tank needs pumping, or you've got a problem with liquid waste removal, or your sewer and sink drain lines are all plugged up, need cleaned out. They can do it. Dino's Septic Service, they are the best. I'm telling you, these are the nicest people to work with. Fast, fair, friendly service. Call them 436-6526 or 678-1638. Yeah, buddy, they'll pull in your yard with that big truck that says smells cargo on the way for Dino's Septic Service. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Yes, good morning, Zeb. How are you this morning there?
Well, I got to tell you, Tony, like I said in the opening, we all got to stick our chin out and be tough and not weaken. How are you?
I'm doing good. I just got this thing in my mind that the Democratic Party is siding with the Communist Party and not blaming the virus on the economic conditions. What they're trying to do is make it look like we're in an economic slump because of bad decisions that Trump is making.
Yeah.
They are siding with the communists.
You know, I know what you're talking about, and when I got the information yesterday from some of my people that work on the East Coast about how the Dems are saying that Trump tanked the economy, that is as despicable and low. A lot of those people on the left that are saying things like this would have to get up on a rock to kick a snake in the belly. I have no use for these people with their lying, slanderous, and evil ways. Can I say it any clearer?
Well, the Democratic Party has been infiltrated by the Communist Party. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Well, the thing is, and I think you'll agree with me, that with the strong strength of the Trump economy, 5 weeks ago, the Democrats didn't have a doggone ledge on the railing to stand on. They were just absolutely in a free fall. They didn't have anything to run on. And I'm still going to maintain, and for those do-gooders in the audience that want to take issue with me, at least have the guts to call me on the air, I'm still going to maintain that a lot of what's going on now is nothing but the filthiest of politics by the left to smear and denigrate this president for the election in November.
Well, what they're going to try to do is bring the country to its knees, and everyone will suffer just like the rest of us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I certainly hope that you and Mary are well and doing just fantastic. God bless you, my dear friend. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Zeb.
You bet. Take care. I want to remind you too quickly about our dear friend. Hello, Zach. I kind of figured I would hear from Abby today, or I hope tomorrow, with the Pledge of Allegiance. And Zach, of course, at Minnecasia Sales at 1321 East Main Street in Burley, right across from the airport. You can't miss them. Holy cow. They're open, and I'm telling you, they've got all your flooring needs. That goes without saying. All your roofing material, all your windows. I mean, they've got windows, doors, siding, all this. And by the way, they've got a lot of carpeting too. Free pad with $200 worth of carpeting. Wow. All of this and so much more with nice people helping you at Minnecasia Sales, 1321 East Main Street in Burley. All right, calls welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. When I heard this yesterday, my wife and I, she was sitting in her respective recliner, I was sitting in mine, and I sat up, and I absolutely was mad. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The World Health Organization, I am absolutely committed to the thought that these people are sinister and evil and absolutely against the United States. The World Health Organization said that they wanted to possibly break into people's homes and take anyone that is sick and quarantine them somewhere. Digest this a little bit, if you would. Take people from their homes, break down the door, come in and take perhaps your son, your daughter, the husband, or the wife, and quarantine them somewhere? You talk about a Gestapo. To take people from their families, that gives you a total picture, clear in your mind, of these degenerates that are absolutely seeking and after to obtain total control over your life. Total control over your life and put you where they want you, under their thumb. But to say that they would want to have the right to come into your home, in other words, just knock on the door, if they suspect or hear that you have a sick party in your home, they're coming in and they're going to take someone and put them in quarantine? I have a feeling if that happens, there's going to be a whole lot of lead poisoning. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning, Mr. Bell. I was just gonna say what you said. They come busting through my door, they're going to get more than they bargained for.
Well, I tell you what, when you hear things like this, and they are solidified actually by going right back to the people that are spokesmen for the World Health Organization, it kind of gives you a little chill, doesn't it?
Well, it does. It's just another way to, override what Trump is trying to do.
Yeah.
If everybody would just come together and work for the people that put them in office, we could have so many great things happening. If people would just stay home, we could get rid of this in a matter of weeks, not months.
Well, tomorrow, Donna, I'm glad you said what you said, but tomorrow at, let me check my day planner here, 9:30 tomorrow morning, we're going to have Governor Little on the phone with us for about 20 minutes. Now, in that 20 minutes, I'm going to specifically go into a newspaper story that quoted him as saying, and I don't have it in front of me, so I'm going to paraphrase, we're not going to be going back to normal anytime soon. Well, Donna, we have to at least try a semblance of normal really quick, or there won't be any supposed normal to go back to.
No, you're definitely right. And if he would go ahead and order and enforce the shelter in place, close down everybody for 2 weeks, we could get a handle on this and be done with it.
Well, I agree with that. But the point I'm getting at when I said what I said a moment ago is that businesses are going under. People are suffering, worrying. And I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but this is a statistic that was given yesterday, and it's absolutely scary. Are you aware that the national suicide rate has gone up from 1,000 a day to 25,000 a day because of the worries of what's going on?
Oh, I believe it. People, they're scared. They really don't know what to do. They've never had to deal with this kind of pandemic before. And so instead of, and I feel for those people, I do. I feel for all the workers that have been laid off. That's not right. They have families. They have bills. But, let's write it out, guys.
Well, okay, write it out up to a certain period of time. My wife and I are committed to writing this out, to use your terminology, until the end of April. Notice my words, until the end of April. Then I'm going to go back. Then I'm 90% assured myself that I'm going to go back to a lifestyle of If I have to wear a mask out in public or a bandana pulled up over my mouth and nose, I will. But I'm going to go back into trying to resume somewhat of a quote-unquote normal lifestyle and try to run my business. People are giving up. People are out of work. Businesses are closing. There are numerous family problems, suicide rates, and parents not knowing what to do with their kids at home while they have to work. I mean, we've got to get back to some semblance of normalcy, regardless of what's happening with this virus.
Oh, I totally agree with you. And I feel, like I said, I feel for the people who are stressing and, taking their lives. That's terrible. But if we could just hold together, and I'm like you, I'm giving it till the end of April, I'm going crazy. I'm not one to sit around and not work.
Well, I know that, and now you've got an additional problem. You have to sit around with George in the house, and I'm telling you something, I can't extend to you enough sympathy.
Yeah, I appreciate the cards. But, in all reality, this is a very bad thing. And if, like I said, if everybody would just come together and for 2 weeks, 14 days, stay home, teach your children. Some of these families are, I think they're finally realizing what the teachers have to go through every single day.
Yeah.
And they don't like it.
Well, I can say this, that big diesel pickup that I've got, it's never, ever since I've owned it got such great fuel mileage.
Neither has ours.
It's not going anywhere. I got to run, Donna. God bless you and George. Thank you so much.
You betcha. Have a good day.
All right, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget Magic Valley Irrigation with our old buddy Jeff and his whole crew at 44 East, 500 South of Burley. Oh, my goodness, they appreciate your business, and they know irrigation. Boy, are they busy right now. They look forward to serving you with all the handline risers, the U-bends, Healy arc welding, all the pumps, manufacturing, of course, wheel line elbows, and much, much more. Yep, they are experts, and they want to serve you. Magic Valley Irrigation at 678-3101. You get a hold of Jeff and the crew today. Magic Valley Irrigation. Right now, we are going to go to the phone line, and I think my itty-bitty buddy over there at the station wheels has got it all lined up. He's the quarterback, and we have on the phone, I believe, Cassia County Clerk Joe Larson on the phone. Joe, are you there? And we'll try that again. Yes, sir.
I was just letting you know I am still trying to call him.
Well, continue. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
and hopefully we're going to get him on the air. I called him yesterday, and I said, Joe, I need you on the air at 8:30 this morning. I want to talk a little bit about the Idaho primary. And he said he would be available. So we will see if we can get him. By the way, I want to just talk a little bit about this drug, and I'm probably going to mispronounce it. I am not a doctor. I think it's hydrochloroquine. And there was a doctor on TV yesterday that I think was on at Martha McCallum's time slot on Fox News, and he denigrated that drug. Why, it's snake oil, basically. And he said it's not doing any good. It said, whoa, wait a minute, stop the bus for a minute and let's open the doors. Many, many, many people in other countries, including the United States, have said, doctors have said, that drug, when given, and it's been around for 30, 40, 50 years, has shown a pronounced help in getting people back on their feet from the coronavirus. And then this one doctor, for some reason yesterday, came out and denounced the use of this drug and said basically that it was a waste of time. This one doctor, as compared to all the others that we've seen and listened to and read about in the news, kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit. Let's see if we've got Joe on the phone. Is he there, Wheels? Is Wheels there?
Yes, sir. He is on the phone.
All right. Good morning to the Cassia County Clerk, Joe Larson. Joe, how are you?
Good. How are you, Zeb?
I'm great. I'm going to get right to the point because I haven't got a lot of time, and I want to be very succinct about this. We're in a situation in the state of Idaho right now where we're looking at the Idaho primaries on May 19th, and for the first time, correct me if I'm wrong, we're looking at a total mail-in ballot for that election, and I want you to explain how it's going to work and why. Go ahead, please.
Okay, the reason why I think is pretty evident to everybody in Idaho. The coronavirus pandemic is changing the way that all of us will vote for the May primary election. And based on a governor's proclamation declaring an emergency and an announcement from the Secretary of State's office regarding the May primary election, there are some changes that have taken place to allow everybody to have the right for a free and fair election.
Okay.
So how that will proceed for the May 19th election is that they're all polling places in the state of Idaho, which would mean everything in Cassia and Minidoka County will be closed. The only locations on May 19th where a ballot can be received or where voter registration can take place in Idaho if somebody's not already registered is at the courthouse. And we're going to probably set up facilities in front of the courthouse for receiving mail ballot requests as well as receiving the ballots on the 19th. The big change is there's 2 weeks from that date, from May 19th to June 2nd, that we'll have time to process all the mail-in ballots. Currently, we have 24 precincts in Cassia County, 6 of which are mail-in ballots already, and that's Almo, Bridge, Elba, Hegler, Yale, Parsons, and Sublette. The other 16 precincts have established polling locations. That's what's been suspended by the governor's proclamation and the Secretary of State's announcement. So what that means basically is that everybody should start right now with a very simple 3-process method that we've got in order to get their ballots and to be able to receive that ballot in our deadline dates, by our deadline dates. And that's number 1, to request your ballot ASAP. And we've already had at least 250 voters in the last few days that have done this process. Then you wait for your ballot, which will return to you. It could be up to 10 days before you get it. Then you vote and return your ballot. And it has to be postmarked by midnight the 19th, which is the day of the election, for it to be tabulated and us to announce the results on June 2nd. There will be no announcement of results prior to the June 2nd date to allow the time for us to tabulate the votes.
Joe, a couple of questions. Number 1, you said request a ballot. Now, let's clarify this. The water's a little muddy and not too clear on this. They're going to be receiving a card asking them to request the ballot. Is that not correct?
That's true. That's why we're getting ahead of the game right now with people following these steps according to our website. I would recommend that everyone go to CassiaCounty.org/elections, and we have succinctly defined everything that needs to take place there. The other avenue is to call our office, and our office number is 878-5240, and leave a message. We do have some stay-at-home orders with employees of the county, and we will get to that within 24 hours. We'll be able to send that ballot out. But now this is our ahead-of-the-game process in Cassia County and other counties in the state. The Secretary of State's office, in probably 10 days from now, or first part of next week, I think is what it is, 10 days from last Friday, we'll have a mailer that goes out to all registered voters, and that's just a little over 10,000 voters in Cassia County. They'll receive this mail piece that gives them this 3-step process to request the ballot, wait for the ballot, and vote and return the ballot. Then they do that in the time frame specified so that we receive it. We receive the returned ballot back by no later than that May 19th date for pre-registering, and then if somebody requests the ballot on the 19th, they have up until June 2nd to make sure the elections office has that voted ballot in place.
All right, Joe, now, is this consistent with what's happening in every county in Idaho?
That's correct. There's very little variance from this. We've been very close to all 44 county clerks have been in consultation with conference calls on numerous occasions with our Secretary of State's office so that we're as uniform as possible. And we're making sure that this is consistent from county to county. And that's critical in our area, obviously, because District 27 includes both Minidoka and Cassia County. So the rules in Minidoka County will be very much the same and the process will be very much the same as Cassia County.
Okay.
I would recommend that the Minidoka County voters go to their website, but you'll see very similar processes. There's very, very little variation there.
Joe, let's be straight up and honest like you always are. Are you concerned about this one-time mail-in ballot in this enormity for the primaries? Are you concerned about a lackadaisical attitude? Are you scared that people might just all of a sudden say, oh, I think I left that underneath the dining room table someplace? Are you afraid that they're not going to take action?
No, I really am not, Zeb, and the reason why is because of our past experience. Where we're a unique county with the number of polling locations that we've got and precincts we've got in the number of 24, we have these 6 that I just mentioned to you, or 2, 4, 6 of them that are vote by mail already. They're following this exact same process in all 6 of those precincts, and here's what we see in the history. The voter turnout is always higher from a vote-by-mail precinct than it is to show up to a polling location. So I'm thinking that in light of the difficulty we're going through with the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, that we'll probably see a little higher turnout during that time. We're predicting it'll be higher than what we've seen in recent years because of the ease of being able to do this vote-by-mail from within your own home. So I'm thinking it won't create a colossal problem. It's going to create probably some good remedies. And we've got some things in place to where we're going to get these the absentee ballot applications out to everybody. And it's very critical for one big reason, that those absentee ballot applications be filled out. I've heard the dialogue throughout the United States of, well, I'm already registered voter, just send me the ballot. That doesn't work under Idaho's law because you can either vote the Constitution Party, the Democratic Party, the Libertarian Party, the Republican Party, or you can be unaffiliated. And each one has a different designation. For example, if you are a declared unaffiliated voter, you have the right to affiliate on Election Day with the Republican Party and vote the Republican ballot. Without that, you cannot. So someone designating Republican Party can vote the Republican ballot, or they can choose to vote the Democratic ballot. Now, this year, we have the unaffiliated races that go along with 2 commissioners, the sheriff, prosecuting attorney, as well as precinct committeemen, and that is taxing district elections. The city of Burley has a street levy, and the second one is a potential formation of the Ace Fire Protection Taxing District in the Alma-Elba Bridge precincts, and then the Rock Creek Fire Protection District, which is on the west side of our county, that only the Parsons precinct out there is part of that district. Then the 4th one is the Valley View or Malta Cemetery District, which is a permanent override levy. It involves both, they're all 4, the Bridge, Malta, and Sublette. They're all 3, the Bridge, Malta, and Sublette precincts. So to fill out this request form, you've got to designate your party affiliation or designate that you're unaffiliated, and that will then dictate which ballots you receive.
Let me ask you this question, and it's not so much of a question as it is a statement. I, as a talk show host, am really getting sick and tired of hearing 15, 18, maybe 20, 21% voter turnout. Would you take just a minute, and I've only got 2 minutes left, and stress the importance of voting in the primary election?
The significance in this primary election is just what I explained to you. There are 4 taxing district elections that actually will have to do with folks that are in those precincts, what their levies amounts will be. There's potential increase based on the 4 that are on the ballot. It has a lot to do with voter turnout. Mm-hmm. And it is very disappointing to see the low numbers of turnout when you have just over 10,000 registered voters, when you have a population of 23,000 people. That's less than half that are even registered to vote. The other significance is this. Even though there are elections that are uncontested, we do have a contested race in the primary election in Cassia County. There are no Democratic candidates on the county election side, but there is on the state side. So we'll be voting for a national election for the primary, the statewide election for the primary that includes legislative districts and potential opposition there that might exist. And we've also got these local races that there is one that's contested, and there's also these taxing districts. So voter turnout is very critical, and I think that's probably in the 10 years I've served in this capacity. What's the most disappointing to me is the the lack of desire for people to be participating in the voting process. And that's nationwide. It's not just our location.
Absolutely. I want you right now to take 30 seconds and give us a recap quickly of how they will vote, how they get their ballots, etc. Real quick.
Okay, on the website for CashierCounty.org/elections, you've got several choices there. The absentee voting is the tab that I've set up everything in there for people to request their ballot in two fashions. One from the county directly, which will be a little faster, and the other is to follow the three-step process by going to IdahoVotes.org, and that's to vote early there, and they'll see three tabs through the Secretary of State's office where they request the ballot with the appropriate information, wait for the ballot, and then vote and return their ballot. It's a very, very simple process, but I would highly encourage everybody in the Mini-Cash area to call the Cassia County Clerk's Office or the Minidoka County Clerk's Office. We have accommodations for those that may be challenged in one way or another. We'll help them individually, and we're set up to be able to do that.
Joe, you did an outstanding job, and I absolutely thank you for taking the time this morning. The Cassia County Clerk, Joe Larson, a good friend of this program. Thank you, sir, and please know that I'll be having you back on in the next couple of days. Thank you so much.
I'll be happy to do it. Thanks, Sam. Have a good day.
Thank you, sir. I want to remind you, too, about our friends at Berry Equipment and Rental. Hello, Buffalo Bill Cody and the crew over there at the Burley location. And don't forget Berry Equipment and Rental Sales, Service, and Parts. 159 West Highway 30 in Burley, 465 Addison Avenue West in Twin, and, of course, the Nampa location. And they've got a brand new inventory for this year. Let me tell you, all the Bobcats, all the shapes and sizes, all the Doosan wheel loaders and excavators for the lifting and the digging and the pushing and the carrying. I mean, they've got great financing programs, great rentals. They've got it all at Berry Equipment and Rental. Burley, Twin Falls, and Nampa. You get a hold of those good folks today. All right, calls are welcome, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. I will not be corrected or chastised for agreeing with many senators, including and House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy and others that have said we need to absolutely call for an investigation into China's role in the coronavirus spread. It needs to be done. It needs to be done. And fingers need to be slapped with a ruler, or even more. China absolutely is the cause of this problem. Somebody called last week and said, how dare you, you're a bigot and a hate monger because you're after China. Call me what you will, but that's where the virus started. Call me what you will, but they could have been contained and stopped in that respective area had they allowed medical professionals from around the world to jump in and take control of the situation. They lied to the world. China lied to the world. And I make no bones about it. I side with the fact that they need to be chastised and corrected, and they are liable. And as a matter of fact, quickly before I take this call, there was a reporter at a press conference yesterday, and it got a little dicey. This woman actually works for a Phoenix TV station, which is Hong Kong-based and owned by parts of the Chinese government. And she was going after Trump because he was being anti-China on his remarks about the way they're controlling the medicine and everything else. And finally, he asked her if she's working for the Chinese government, and that's when all heck broke loose. I agree with him. Caller, good morning. You're on the air.
Good morning again. How do you reason with someone who doesn't believe in the Lord and Jesus Christ? How do you reason with them? They are evil, and that's about all I can say.
They're a nation that is not a humane nation. I honestly believe the Chinese government has shown their absolute inhumaneness to mankind on numerous occasions. And it's really funny that some of these, I don't mean funny in a laughable sense, I mean funny odd, that some of the doctors that were working on the coronavirus, all of a sudden, when they wanted to speak out and say this is out of control and here's what happened, they disappeared.
You know, we know nothing about how it's like to be under communist rule. It is a terrible situation, and I hope and pray the United States will never go near this. I know President Trump won't.
Well, whoa. Stop for a minute, Keith. You made a statement there that's absolutely an excellent statement to elaborate on. You hope that we'll never be under a communist-type rule. You know, looking at, of course, some of the candidates that were running for office, Sanders, and then others that are in office in lower positions, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and others, that's where they want to put us, Keith.
That's absolutely right. And AOC, a terrible, terrible person who's been given the gift to gab, to tell people all the stuff they want to hear.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And that's the only thing she's good at, is talking.
She, as an advocate, I said this yesterday, and I've got story upon story, she's an advocate of just literally opening up the prisons and saying, oh, well, poor baby, maybe you are the victim instead of the actual victims. This woman scares me. And don't think for a minute, not even a microsecond, that this woman isn't going to stay in the public eye somehow. And not this election, but in future elections, Keith, hold on to your resistol, pull up your cowboy boots. She's going to be causing more trouble.
Yeah, do you suppose she's got a wall around her house?
Well, I'm certain she doesn't, but what I'm saying is this woman is going to be absolutely anti-American, anti-Constitution, anti-American values, and one to be reckoned with, and I hope and pray somebody of some strength and magnitude will run against her and bounce her out of office.
What kind of district does she live in? I mean, to be able to get elected there, just being a stupid bartender. I shouldn't say stupid bartender, because a lot of bartenders are smarter than she is.
That's true.
But I correct myself on that. But she has no business being there. I'll just put it that way.
Well, the same can be said of Presley and Ilhan Omar and others. Keith, I got to get a weather forecast on. God bless you for your call. Thank you so much. Again, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Our weather brought to you by our friends at Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. And believe me, their phones are open 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, and they absolutely will help you as much as they can over the phone right now. And they're also offering a drive-up clinic during the hours of 10 to 3. Somebody will be available to meet you in the parking lot and help you from Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. They care. That's the bottom line. They care about your hearing health. I urge you to call them at 312-0957. 312-0957, located right behind the Minidoka Hospital, across from the emergency room, Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. And right now, here's Gina with the weather.
Sunshine for the rest of the week, which is going to do the soul some good. Here's a look at your weather forecast for the day. We are expecting sunny skies. Slight breeze out of the south-southwest at about 8 miles an hour. Turning to the west by this afternoon, we are expecting a high of 61. Tonight, mostly clear skies with a low of 35. Tomorrow, another beautiful day. Sunny skies with a high of 60. Overnight low of 35. By Thursday, sunny and 68, maybe 70 for Friday. That's a look at your weather forecast for Zebeth Rain.
Wow. I'm loving that. Good weather forecast. Thank you, Gina. Brought to you by Mount Harrison Audiology and Hearing Aids. And they want you to know that they are there to support you and your hearing health at this very difficult time. Call, make an appointment. They'll help you any way they can at 312-0957. I'd love some calls right now, 436-2244, 1-866-927-4587. You know, just about the time, pardon me, about the time you think the Democrats are at the bottom of the sleaze barrel, oh no, au contraire, they've still got a long ways to go. Caller, good morning, you're on the air.
Your wish is your command.
Oh, General Martin here.
Self-promoted, of course.
Yes.
Yeah, you know, you remember that cartoon, I've mentioned it before, where the guy's looking down this hole and Holler Down said they had the plans upside down?
Yeah.
When they're building the skyscraper.
I do. As a matter of fact, I saved it and I put it in this my very organized desk someplace.
Someplace, like my desk.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's what the Democrats are doing right now. I mean, I look at what they're doing and think, are they really that dumb, or did they really think the American people is that dumb?
No, they really are that dumb and sinister and evil. And when they had not a leg to stand on going up against Trump, I don't care who the candidate was. I don't care if it was Warren or if it was Sanders or now Biden. None of them could have absolutely lit a candle in a cave and have any light against Trump's economy. But isn't it funny and weird that all of this is taking place to denigrate the economy and destroy Donald Trump, and then they come out and say that he, Donald Trump, tanked the economy. I mean, they're the lowest of the low.
Well, they are. They do not care about the people that are suffering or the people that are dying from this coronavirus. They don't care about them a bit. They just want to use them to gain political advantage.
Absolutely.
And that is very sad, and it's very evil.
Yep.
For someone to do that. That is not a Christian who prays for the president every day does something like this.
Yeah, I just can't imagine. You said it earlier, but the gullibility, they're playing on the hopes of the gullibility of America not to see through their smokescreen and their false front building, and they're hoping people will say, well, Trump wrecked the economy. Wait a minute. 5 weeks ago, the economy was booming, Wall Street was at its highest level ever, and then all of a sudden opened the door for the coronavirus, started in China, and Trump's going to get the blame for this?
Exactly. Because he didn't act fast enough, and when he put in that travel ban, they were calling him xenophobic and every phobic-ism name that they could think of.
There are a bunch of frauds, charlatans, snake oil salesmen, whatever you want to say. You can start at the top of the list: Schumer, Pelosi, AOC, right on down the list. I mean, if America even is considering voting for them as president and leadership of the United States, we are in a lot of trouble.
Yes, we are. And if they want that type of government, I have a recommendation. Go live.
Don't ask for my recommendation, by the way.
China for 6 months.
Yeah.
Or a year. And see if you want that here in America.
You see,
that's what they'd be voting for.
Yeah, but your point is so well taken. These unknowledgeable, and I'm just going to be blunt, stupid people that follow them like a fish after a lure. They don't know because they haven't studied, they haven't done their homework, they haven't seen about the heartache and the hardship, they don't know about all the collapses of governments around the world that have tried that type of government, and yet they want to put us in that position. I mean, it's mindless.
Well, it's mindless, but it's been planned for many years, Ab.
That's true. That's true.
When you let a government educate your youth, the government is going to teach them what the government wants them to know.
I couldn't agree more. And that's happening in our school systems right now.
It has happened for many years.
Yep.
And it's getting worse.
Yep.
I mean, you talk to a kid going into high school right now and ask them about the Holocaust. Ask them about the gas chambers. Ask them about how many people the communist regimes have killed. Ask them about Castro and how many people have died there.
I'm almost out of time, but I want to say this in back to your statement. If they're questioning about the horror, if they're questioning about the deaths, if they're questioning about the possible extinction of the Jews, it's too bad that our dear friend Russell Smith is not still with us, because he was one of the soldiers that was right there when they went to these prison camps and evacuated what was left of the Jewish population before they were put in the incinerators and the gas chambers. He was there. These kids need to hear it from people like him.
Exactly. And can you imagine the horror that was going through their mind when they saw what they come upon when they freed that gas chambers? And
absolutely. Doug, I'm running really late. I hate to interrupt you, but I got to go to the news right now from CBS, and I will be back in about 7 minutes. Got to run. Thank you so much. All right. Wheels, take it away, buddy. I'll be right back. Good morning. What a beautiful sky out there. I don't see any clouds out my window, and it looks like it's going to be a fantabulous day. Good morning, Zeb at the Ranch. I'm Zeb Bell, and brought to you by, in part, Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley, helping you get back to being you. And, of course, Greystone Crossing Independent Senior Living at 1221 21st Street in Heyburn. Seniors living the good life with friends. And right now, this good word for our friends at Western Waste Services.
From the canyons of the Snake River and all across southern Idaho, we're always at your disposal. Western Waste Services, we care about our community, our resources, and this great land. Western Waste Services is lending a hand, always at your disposal.
Western Waste Services, always at your disposal. It's true. And you need to get a dumpster and clean out the garage. You need to get a dumpster and clean out maybe the basement or whatever. Well, we did, and we're still working on it too. They've got dumpsters in various sizes, and I urge you to give them a call. They'll bring one out, drop it off. You fill it up, they'll come and get it. It's easy. Western Waste Services, always at your disposal. Call the number 734-6969. Want to also take the time to really, really brag about some folks that are just exceptional in what they do to help you get back to being you. Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley. Oh, my. They know that these are trying times, and they're doing their utmost to try to work with everybody to recoup after a surgery or an accident, or, if you've had any other problems with muscles and joints, etc., they're there to help you get back to being you. Please give them a call at 678-1191. That number again, 678-1191. Nick Greenwell and all the excellent physical therapists at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley. Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation. And real quick before I go to my guest, he's chomping on the bit. I'll get him right on. I want to remind everybody about Hanson Mortuary and say a great big shout out and thank you to the wonderful service they provide to the community. And they're always helping the community at Hanson Mortuary, 710 6th Street in Rupert. When there's the passing of a loved one, absolutely it is a very tumultuous time. And Hanson Mortuary and Joel Heward and his staff always providing the families they serve with the best possible support and comfort, and always upholding the highest ethical standards with unquestioned integrity. I urge you to call the number 436-5636. That number again, 436-5636. Hanson Mortuary in Rupert, and Joel Heward also serving you and your family at Morrison Payne Funeral Home on East Main in Burley. Right now, we're going to go to the phone line. And on Tuesdays, we have been blessed with the presence of this man with the American Energy Alliance, and he is absolutely the most knowledgeable about what's going on with energy or the lack of. Good morning, Dan Kish. How are you?
Good morning, Zeb. I'm well, and I hope you and your audience are as well.
We are. It's a little bit difficult to hear you because I know you're out in a remote area right now, so we're going to try to turn you up as much as possible. I want to talk to you a little bit to start things off this morning. Dan, green energy. Do you think that most of the American public really understands that they're picking up the tab for the transition to green energy?
No, I don't, Zeb. I do not, and but it's going to become crystal clear pretty quick if they keep doing what they're doing. The good news is that because we're in tough times, people are all of a sudden waking up. I mean, San Francisco, those recyclable bags they tell us to bring our groceries home in and that sort of thing, they've banned those now. They're going back to plastic because plastic is clean and it comes from energy. It's made from oil and gas, and all of a sudden, when things get tough, people start getting back to basics, and the basics are that energy is so important to our lives that we can't just willy-nilly drive the price up for no good reason.
Dan, I had heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, as far as the reusable grocery bags that people brought in, I'd heard that the disease and the germ factor was so great, perhaps a product spills in the bag, and when they're done using the bag, they just kind of throw it in the trunk of their car, and then that's led to other bacteria getting in there, and they found out that it was far, far less safe. Am I on the right ballpark here?
Oh, you're absolutely right, Zeb. That's exactly why they banned them. Massachusetts. I mean, think about Massachusetts. This is the kind of place that bans plastic bags and the rest. They, too, have said no more using those recyclable bags because they realize at a time like COVID, the last thing we need is to be spreading this stuff around by using reusable bags. And the same thing goes for other diseases that they've found in the past. So what's happening is when all of a sudden people's attention is focused on health and a healthy way of doing things, all of these virtue signaling things like that go by the wayside. And hopefully the same thing will happen with this so-called green energy, which is anything but green. Remember that China makes 80% of our solar panels. We don't like them making our medicines. We sure as heck don't want to be dependent upon them for our energy.
Well, you bring up such a real good point because right now, here in the state of Idaho, there are the OKs for what's called the Jackpot Solar Farm, and it's going to be the largest solar farm in the state of Idaho. And then to the north of me, Idaho's biggest wind farm is planned near Shoshone. And I don't think the general public really realizes or appreciates what kind of a very negative Pandora's box they're opening.
Well, all I can say, Zeb, is that in places where they're where they've got them already, they're fighting the deployment of more of them. What happens is familiarity breeds contempt with these things. People don't like the looks of them, for one thing, and there's a lot of people fighting back at the local level. But also what happens is because they put them out there, all of a sudden stories start getting written about just exactly how it works. I mean, these Chinese solar panels, the taxpayers are paying 30% of the cost of those. Think about that. 30% of the cost of that solar farm is going to be paid for by taxpayers, the capital cost, up front, and 80% of the solar panels made in the world come from China. So we're going to be ending up sending U.S. taxpayers dollars when there aren't that many being generated because the whole country's shut down, to pay for solar panels to fire up Chinese factories to ship them over here to the United States. Now, you tell me if that makes any sense.
None. You know, and one thing other that I'd like to talk about a little bit that makes no sense is the fact that the environmental movement is so concerned about the environment and denigrating mankind because of all the evils that we've done, but yet these same people, whether it's any group, any Back to Nature group, they're advocating for solar and wind turbines that are absolutely desecrating the landscape. They're the most ridiculous people that you could ever be around.
Well, yeah, Zeb. I mean, the fact of the matter is, if they were talking about clearing hundreds or thousands of acres and putting something that covers the ground on it, typically these people would be pulling their hair out, they'd be protesting, they'd be going crazy. But because it's more expensive energy, and it's energy that I don't know. It's almost like if it's made in America, like our energy is, we're the number one energy producer in the world. They're against it. I don't know what motivates them. I've never understood it. It seems to be a self-loathing or hatred for America, or maybe they hated their daddies. I don't know what it is, but something makes them look at the world from a totally different perspective of typical red-blooded Americans who love this country, love their families, and want to see them do well.
I am absolutely shocked, and Wheels, I got a little feedback here, buddy. I'm absolutely shocked, Dan, that our education system from kindergarten all the way through the university system is advocating all the green energy and turning out more green energy enthusiasts in the world every single day. It's devastating to me to think that they've lost common sense.
Well, honestly, Zeb, I mean, these groups that you talk about, these green groups, actually write many of the textbooks and the material that some of our public school teachers use, and that's why. And one of the things that is happening, interestingly enough, because so many kids are being taught from home now, is that parents are able to see the material that the kids are learning. And I think it's been a real wake-up call for a lot of them about, wait a minute, you're teaching my kids that America's bad because we have the number one economy in the world? That can't go forward. And so if there's a blessing in any of this, it may be that people wake up and understand what's real and what's unreal, and what's false, and operate accordingly going forward.
You know, we're going through more of the pratfalls, I'll use that word, of the liberal left loons that want to breach our dams on the Snake River and the Columbia River going to the coast and basically destroy all the barge traffic of grain going to the coast and put the load back on trucking and rail, which the environmentalists don't want and they won't stand for. I mean, it's absolutely stupid and silly what is allowed to happen in this country, and I certainly hope dam breaching is not allowed to happen, not only for the inconsistencies of what it would cause and the regression that it would cause, but the loss of power. And it goes back to the old statement, if it ain't broke, why fix it?
Well, isn't it amazing, Zeb, that the people who say that the biggest threat to the world is global warming caused by carbon dioxide are that we need to go to green power sources, and they point to Chinese solar panels and Chinese-made wind turbine components, and they make a lot of them, are opposed to American dams built with American hands that have tamed rivers so that we can use them for navigation and commerce and generation of power, which doesn't produce any carbon dioxide. So when you really pull back the mask these people aren't these people aren't environmentalists so much as they are anti-capitalist, anti-human, and anti-growth. And the idea that you would pull down dams that are producing so-called green energy without any carbon dioxide, and it just makes no sense to thinking individuals.
Let me ask you this, in regards to oil production worldwide and the fights that have been going on, thank goodness verbally up to this point, between Russia, Saudi Arabia, and us. Bring us up to speed on where we are with world oil production and what's happening and what you think is going to happen in the next year to maybe 2 years.
Well, the second part of the question I can't answer because I have no idea what motivates these people, but I will tell you this. Where we are right now is that the world is producing a lot more oil than it's consuming. I mean, it's a double whammy. Not only did they take the governors off the engines to produce in Saudi Arabia and Russia, but then the entire world economy has gone into the tank because of the Chinese flu. And what we've got here is much less demand. They're just planes are sitting, vehicles are sitting, people aren't using fuel, so we've got a lot more of it, and they're running out of places to put it. President Trump has said that they can use some storage space that we've got vacant in the ground down in Texas and Louisiana, Strategic Petroleum Reserve. The talks that are going to happen between all the oil-producing countries were scheduled for yesterday, and they were postponed until Thursday. We'll get a better idea on Thursday of where we're going. There is growing hope that the Saudis and Russians will stop their fight. Cheap energy is good. Having affordable energy is good, but if everybody started growing potatoes and plowing under every last acre to grow potatoes, pretty soon nobody'd be producing potatoes, and the same thing holds true for oil.
You know, Dan, whether it's the energy, right now I'll use the word crunch, there's not a lack of, there's so much of it, but yet we're going to see possibly a lot of disruption of production in this country because a lot of the oil companies with the coronavirus and people out of work, not going to work, not having jobs, has caused our oil industry to take a back seat. This has all got to change soon, or we could see very easily a worldwide depression based primarily on the cause and effect of this coronavirus. Am I right or wrong?
You're right, Zap. I mean, the president's been talking about this, and, I don't want to cast any stones here. I'm not a doctor. I don't pretend to be. But the president's job is to look out for all of these things. He has to listen to the healthcare experts, but he also has to balance that against the fact that if you've got a bunch of people who are out of work, businesses that aren't running, and things going forward, and nothing moving, pretty soon it starts to wreak havoc on the entire system, and people will die from, increased suicide rates. Things just won't get done, and we need that. Our country we're an energetic country, and so there is hope that with some of the improving numbers that are out there in terms of the rates of infection and that sort of thing, that this will turn around and we'll be able to begin to open the economy back up and let some of this pressure off because, boy, there's a lot of pent-up demand out there, Zap. People are going to be going out and buying all the stuff they couldn't buy when they were told to stay at home.
Well, and the thing we have to do, I know there has to be a weighing of public safety, family safety, etc. with this virus. But right now, the wheels have stopped turning in this country. And quite frankly, it's going to take a while, even if all of a sudden everybody put the key in the ignition and turned it on. It's going to take a while to find out what businesses and associated businesses are still in effect that can help the economy get back to normal. That's what I'm worried about.
No, you're absolutely right, Jeff. I mean, there's been a lot of people who've been hit hard, and you know, the one thing I have to say though is this is America. We can take a pretty good punch and come roaring back, and we always have in the past. And if the politicians don't get in the way and try to, you know, make this into some kind of controlled economy or something like that, we should be okay, because the system works pretty good when as long as you don't have nitwit politicians sticking their fingers in things, and so ultimately that's the blessing that God gave us when he blessed our founders who created this great nation, and that and the hard work and perseverance and God-fearing American public should help turn this thing around.
Let me ask you this, Dan. I do not know, and I'm sure you do, the basics of the Chinese energy program. Where do they derive most of their energy from? Do they do their own drilling programs, their own production? Are they reliant upon imports? I mean, give me a little basis as to China.
Yeah, China's economy, their principal fuel source, not only for their electricity, but also for their industry, is coal. So things that we did many years ago in this country, they do now. They use it for heating. They use it for, a very large majority, somewhere 70 to 75% of their energy is derived from coal. They produce a huge amount of coal themselves. They don't have the reserves that we do, but they have many mines spread across China, and so they produce that. They also have some natural gas production, but they're net importers of that. And in terms of oil, they're producers of oil, not only at home, but they've been trying to spread abroad. They tried to buy up Union 76 here 15 years ago, something like that. They're drilling offshore wherever they're allowed, and they're trying to expand into the South China Sea and Vietnam with some of those false islands they've put out there. And they buy a huge amount of oil from the Middle East, from Venezuela, where they've underwritten their loans, and Iran. Mm-hmm. So that's basically where they get their energy. Plus, they're building nuclear power plants, and they have the world's largest fleet of hydroelectric dams. When our environmentalists are talking about how, gee, China's so great, they're building hydroelectric dams, and the environmentalists here in the United States want to tear ours down.
You know, Dan, I wish I had more time, but I want to say thank you for all your diligence in coming on the program. I want you to enjoy your day up there in the mountains, and God bless you, man. We'll talk to you next Tuesday. Thank you so much, Dan Kish with the American Energy Alliance. Thank you.
Thanks, Zeb. God bless.
All right, take care, my dear friend. Straight shooter, and really tells it like it is, Dan Kish, and I appreciate him being on our show. Oh, I'll tell you some other folks that are straight shooters, and that's our friends over at Let's Ride. Hello, Let's Ride, 270 Highway 24 between Rupert and the World. They've got new hours, and I urge you to remember they're closed on Mondays. They're open Tuesdays through Fridays, 9 to 5, Saturdays 10 to 2. And if you need service work done on your four-wheelers that you you already own, you'd better get them in there now. They're offering 15% off all service work from now until, I believe, the end of April. So you better check it out. And by the way, if you need parts for anything, they'll make sure they make arrangements to ship them right to you. So don't forget the people that are absolutely caring. In this time of kind of cutting back a little bit, they're just absolutely serving everybody. They know the farmers need all those four-wheelers, and they need them serviced. So get a hold of them today. Call 436-4771. Let's ride. 270 Highway 24 between Rupert and the World, where the fun is sold. And over in that same neck of the woods, and I'm really, really high on these people because they care, and they're diligent and very devoted to serving you, and that's Cameron and Siemens Insurance, Highway 24 in Rupert. Yes, sir, we just talked to them the other day, as a matter of fact. Life insurance, health insurance, retirement planning, employee benefits, all of this and more from Todd and his great staff that are very thoughtful and caring about you. All you need to do is just call them on the landline, 436-4424. Make an appointment. Cameron and Siemens Insurance, Highway 24 in Rupert. Right now, we are going to go to my next guest, and absolutely have a lot of respect for this man and what he is going to be talking about. And I'll give you a little preview. He is the founder and national spokesman for the Cornwall Alliance for Stewardship of Creation, and a great Christian man, E. Calvin Beisner. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning, Zeb. I'm doing great. How are you?
Well, I'm nervous, and I'm not afraid, but I'm nervous about what's going on with the absolutely blatant attack from the left in various newspapers, on TV, radio, etc., to denounce and try to destroy Christianity. Am I wrong in my worry?
No, you're not. The attacks are coming all over the place, and they're rather ironic in that it's really been Christianity that has provided the foundation for modern science.
When you say that, the foundation for modern science, and then we hear the left go after our president and say, well, he's just associated with the evangelicals, and they start denouncing anybody of any faith. And then you read stories that are in the New York Times and other newspapers denouncing and criticizing Christians as being not science-related, and they're bigots and they're hate mongers. Give us a little semblance of a story that you know personally about the New York Times and their hatred for Christianity.
Yeah, well, just recently, Catherine Stewart, author of a new book called The Power Worshippers, published an article in the New York Times called The Religious Right's Hostility to Science is Crippling Our Coronavirus Response. And it's a rather strange article in that what Stewart insists is that somehow or other right-wing conservative evangelicals who are science deniers have influenced the White House, influenced President Trump to appoint as advisors people who are science deniers. And because of that, the White House was not able to be equipped for an adequate response to the coronavirus outbreak. It's a little ironic that she should say that when two of the world's top experts in the field of epidemiology, Drs. Anthony Fauci and Deborah Birx, are Trump's chief advisors on this. A little bit more irony, too, is that Catherine Stewart herself apparently has no scientific credentials at all. In fact, her Wikipedia article doesn't even mention any education for her. She passes herself off as a journalist, but she has not done much in the way of real journalism. What she's done is basically a bunch of attacks on Christians that she's managed to get published in various different newspapers and online sites, but not a real role as a journalist.
Let me ask you this, Calvin, and I think we're good enough friends. You've been on my program many, many times. You'll understand my statement. But here we have this woman, Ms. Stewart, absolutely trying to paint Christianity and Christians into a corner and denigrate them as being science deniers, when at the same time the liberal left is coming out and calling us the deniers of science, but they're the ones that believe that men and women can have 48 to 49 different genders. Who's really the science deniers?
Yeah, right. I mean, there's not only that one, the fact that they deny the basics of human biology that way, they also deny the basics of human biology in terms of the fact that human life, as really, truly human and as life, begins at conception. There is no scientific doubt about that whatsoever. And yet, these folks will just strongly support abortion on demand and call anybody a science denier who disagrees with them about that.
What did you think about that report that came out day before yesterday, I believe, from the World Health Organization as they were underwriting at this particular time of the coronavirus pandemic, they were underwriting and endorsing abortion?
Well, it's really horrific. Whereas total world deaths from coronavirus so far amount to way under 100,000, total world deaths to abortion so far in this year amount to well over 1 million. Even in the United States alone, it already amounts to close to 200,000, whereas deaths from coronavirus in the United States are perhaps around 20,000 by this time. So abortion is killing a whole lot more people than the coronavirus is going to do. And unless laws change, abortion will continue to do that year after year after year. Whereas the coronavirus, the human race will fairly quickly, over a period of a couple of years or so, develop herd immunity to it, and so deaths from it will shrink off to be similar to those from typical flu. The death counts are just very, very different between the two. And it's quite tragic because with coronavirus you have people dying not intentionally, not because somebody has intentionally killed them, but as a tragic result of disease. With abortion, you have people dying because people intentionally kill them. Now, one other comment about the World Health Organization. The WHO has essentially been praising China and its response to the coronavirus all along, and has completely failed to hold China accountable for its own total malfeasance. And I don't say misfeasance. I say malfeasance in hiding the outbreak at first, in dealing with it very poorly at first, in falsifying a whole lot of data that it eventually allowed out of the country about the coronavirus outbreak, and frankly, in persecuting, imprisoning medical personnel who dared to speak out publicly and say what was really happening. I just have very little trust for the World Health Organization. I have much better trust for the U.S. Centers for Disease Control.
Let me ask you this question. When it comes to China, I've been doing this business for over 20 years, having this program, and I am stunned. I got to tell you, I'm stunned by the allegiance to China. Not just from other foreign leaders, not just by the World Health Organization, but also many that are in Congress and the Senate in this country. Why is there such an allegiance and good old boy attitude towards China when they're absolutely one of the, if not the most inhumane nations on the face of the earth?
Boy, that's a really great question, Zeb, and I wish that I knew a good answer to it. There is, of course, the general perspective on the American left in the chattering class, as one journalist has put it,
I think that was George Will who called them that. There's the general leftward bent, which finds itself sympathetic to the Communist Party in its rule of China. There's also, excuse me, there's also the fact that a lot of people in business have seen China as a source of super cheap labor to build manufactured items for sale back here as imports, and they have allowed their economic globalism to crowd out their judgment about the national defense and security issues related to China, which, China definitely sees itself as the great competitor to the United States for global domination in this century. And I think that it has been using the movement of economic production, the outsourcing of it from the United States to China to our disadvantage for a very long time.
Let me ask you this. First of all, I got to ask you, do you have a pet canary in the background?
I'm sorry, I'm sitting out on my front porch and there are birds out in the woods.
I would say you've got some real good birds.
If that's a problem.
They're coming across really well, if you will. Calvin, let me ask you this. In the article...
I am the founder and national spokesman of the Cornwall Alliance for the Stewardship of Creation, and so I love to be out in creation, but I'll step back inside the house.
Thank you, sir. Let me ask you this question. With the article by Ms. Stewart that absolutely denigrates Christianity and religion in general, she said the problem is religious nationalism. Now, with your expertise, explain to me what is so negative about being a religious nationalist. I love my country. I think America is the greatest country on the face of the earth ever and ever will be. And I love my God and all He's done for me. So why am I so hated? And why am I so negative as being a religious nationalist?
Well, when I first encountered that phrase in her article, Zeb, I, like you, was really puzzled. Frankly, I had never encountered the phrase religious nationalist or Christian nationalist anywhere else before. Stewart has been using that for quite some time. Back in 2013, she published a book in which she accused far-right Christian nationalists of wanting to use the public schools in this country to propagandize and evangelize children. What she was actually objecting to was the ability of privately organized, privately run religious clubs, Bible clubs and things of that sort, and not only Christian, by the way, but of any religious background, meeting on public school campuses with equal access to them with non-religious clubs, which is something that the Supreme Court has ruled is perfectly fine. And in fact, to bar religious clubs on the grounds that they are religious violates the First Amendment's guarantee of free exercise of religion. But at any rate, she has been characterizing religious nationalists as people who are far right-wing and anti-science and basically anti-intellectual, and as intent on using the coercive powers of government to force the whole American population to convert to Christianity. That, of course, is absolutely absurd, but I think the choice of the term nationalist there is probably very much affected by the fact that so many people associate nationalism with the Nazi Party, the National Socialistic Party of Germany under Adolf Hitler. So it's just one way that this yellow journalist paints Christians in a bad light just by using derogatory terms rather than by really reasoning.
Yeah, but Calvin, my fear is that there are others of her ilk. There are followers and perhaps even leaders of her train of thought. And how powerful at this juncture are they right now?
Well, I would say that they're definitely a force to be dealt with. I don't think they have tremendous power in America, but they're something that we should take seriously, and we need to be ready at all times, as the Apostle Peter tells us in 1 Peter 3:15, to give to everyone who asks for us and asks of us a reason for the faith that we have. And so that's why when Stewart's article came to my attention, I immediately set about writing a rebuttal that was published in The Federalist last week. New York Times ignores the evidence to slander Christians as coronavirus deniers. That was published in The Federalist, and people can find it just by searching for Beisner and then restricting the search to thefederalist.com.
You know, one of the things I was reading about Catherine Stewart, and it's chilling, is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, she's the author of the book called The Good News Club, The Religious Right's Stealth Attack on America's Children. And that just infuriated me, because we've lost, if you will, the old Saturday Evening Post cover of mom and dad and the kids walking to church on Sunday and going home and having lunch or dinner at the dinner table together as a family. And now she's trying to paint a picture that we are trying to steal the minds of America's children. This is sick.
Yeah, that assumes, of course, that somehow or other the minds of America's children belong to the government, or at least to the leftist, anti-Christian, chattering class of which Stewart is a part. That claim of ownership, I think, is not exactly widely recognized by most parents. I think most parents think these are our children, and we have every right to raise them in the faith that we embrace. And I would say that Muslim parents have a right to raise their children in the Muslim faith, Jewish parents in the Jewish faith, Hindu parents in the Hindu faith, Christian parents in the Christian faith, etc. This is simply recognizing that it's parents who have the primary responsibility and the primary privilege of shaping their children's minds as their children grow. This is certainly what we're told in Deuteronomy chapter 6, for example, for followers of the God of the Bible, that we are to teach the things that God has revealed to us to our children for generations, that they may walk after them. And frankly, the Supreme Court of the United States has recognized this over and over again, and attempts to keep parents from controlling their children's education. Attempts, for example, to ban homeschooling or even to ban private religiously based schools have been struck down again and again by the Supreme Court. So whereas there is certainly reason to be cautious about such attacks, I'm fairly confident that we aren't on the verge of losing our liberties here. But we do need to be vigilant in defense of them and to answer the attacks of people like Catherine Stewart.
When you say we need to be vigilant in defense of them, okay, the question would be, how do we, and I'll underline this word, fight back? And let me say this. I feel, I'm an old man, I'm 72 years old. I feel that Christians have been turning the other cheek to the point where they've almost turned into a bobblehead doll. And it's time for Christianity, I think, to go on somewhat of an offense instead of a defense. How would you respond to that?
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you completely, and that is why, frankly, in my article rebutting hers, I went to the trouble of pointing out the factual errors in her article, pointing out the illogic, the irrationality of her whole approach, and how she had misrepresented the people she was criticizing, lumping all evangelicals together with a few people on the extreme fringe, the name it and claim it, health and wealth gospel kind of idea that says if you're sick, it's because you don't have enough faith. These ideas she represents as representative of evangelical Christianity as a whole, whereas, in fact, the vast majority of evangelicals would define that kind of teaching as heretical, as outside the sphere of real Christianity. And then, of course, also I point out that, frankly, she doesn't appear to have any credentials that would give her credibility to write on science or, for that matter, on religious doctrine. She tries to do it. So, we need to be prepared to not only answer the arguments against us, but also to show the lack of credibility on the part of those who offer those arguments.
Absolutely.
We need to be ready at all times to tear down the strongholds, every argument that presents itself against God, and to take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ, as the Apostle Paul tells us in 2 Corinthians chapter 10.
I know this is the last question I have for you, but I know this sounds like a naive question, but think about it before you respond. What are they, the Catherine Stewarts and others, what are they so afraid of?
Oh, goodness. Proverbs tells us the wicked flee when no one pursues, but the righteous are as bold as a lion. I think in Catherine Stewart and others who write similarly to her, I really think what we're seeing is the fruit of people who are fleeing from God, who are running from God, who are very much afraid of God because they know that they don't meet His requirements, and they are not willing to humble themselves, confess that they are sinners, that they need forgiveness of their sins, and to trust in Jesus Christ as the only way to have that forgiveness. And so, they can't exactly lash out directly at God. God, after all, is infinite, eternal, and unchangeable in His being, wisdom, power, justice, holiness, and truth. He's not a vulnerable target. So instead, they lash out at Christ's followers. I think that's really what we see. They're driven by that kind of a craven fear rather than by the fear of the Lord, which Proverbs tells us is the beginning of wisdom. So we as Christians need to respond to them by refuting their arguments and by offering to them the wonderful good news that their sins can be forgiven if they will repent and embrace Jesus Christ as their Savior and their Lord. That's what we try to do at the Cornwall Alliance for the Stewardship of Creation, as we teach people about biblical earth stewardship, economic development for the poor, and the gospel of Christ. So I'd invite your listeners to come to cornwallalliance.org and subscribe to our email newsletter and learn more.
All I can say is thank you very much to E. Calvin Beisner, founder and national spokesman for the Cornwall Alliance. Thank you, and I hope you have a blessed Easter Sunday coming up this weekend. Calvin, come back soon, please.
You too, Zeb. Thanks.
God bless you. Thank you very much. I enjoy having that man on the program and sincerely appreciate all of his remarks. Right now, oh my goodness sakes, I am running late again. I did it, Wheels, I'm sorry. Weather time, and the weather brought to you by Phillips Oaks, Goodwin, Crane and Company. And they've been providing accounting services to the Mini-Cash area for well over 50 years. And you can imagine, right now they are up to their neck in all this different changes with tax times and the coronavirus stopping and stymieing a lot of businesses, all the questions, all the possible grant money. Oh my goodness. Depend on working with the professionals. Please get a hold of them today with offices in Burley and Rupert. Phillips, Oaks, Goodwin, Crane and Company. And right now, here's Gina with the weather.
sunshine for the rest of the week, which is going to do the soul some good. Here's a look at your weather forecast for the day. We are expecting sunny skies. Slight breeze out of the south-southwest at about 8 miles an hour. Turning to the west by this afternoon, we are expecting a high of 61. Tonight, mostly clear skies with a low of 35. Tomorrow, another beautiful day. Sunny skies with a high of 60. Overnight low of 35. By Thursday, sunny and 68, maybe 70 for Friday. That's a look at your weather forecast for Zebedee.
Oh, excellent, excellent. I love it. Thank you, Gina. It's nice to hear that. Blue skies and 60s. Oh, Phillips Oaks, Goodwin, Crane and Company. The best of tax return preparation, tax planning, business consulting, retirement planning, all of this and more. Offices at 1710 Overland in Burley and 620 5th Street in Rupert. The very best, the professionals. Phillips Oaks, Goodwin, Crane and Company. Wow. Next hour, don't forget, we've got the world famous, and it's true, Dr. History coming on the program. And then at 10:30 this morning, do not miss Steve Hartkin. And we're going to be talking about the lunacy of the dam breaching on the Columbia and the Snake Rivers. We're going to talk about that with Steve coming up at 10:30 this morning. Want to remind you, too, about our friend Zach and the crew at Minnecasia Sales. Good morning at 1321 East Main Street in Burley. Oh, they get there early in the morning and they're serving everybody with all the flooring needs and the roofing material and the windows and the doors and the siding. All of this for your home. Come on, get on over there to 1321 East Main Street in Burley. And right now they're offering a special, a free pad with $200 worth of carpeting. Wow. Minnecasia Sales, the place for you to go. Zach's a good old boy. Tell him I said that. 1321 East Main Street in Burley. Let's see, what else have we got for little news notes that we need to pass on to you? Oh, yes, I want to remind you that Mondays, we started yesterday. Mondays at 10:30, we started our kind of spring and summer activity with Vicky's Country Garden for better growing of your gardens, your lawns, etc. Vicky's Country Garden, located at, of course, 185 South, 600 West of Paul. And we have that segment every Monday at 10:32. I urge you to tune in to the best of gardening, and this lady is so knowledgeable and so nice. Vicky at Vicky's Country Garden, Monday, right here on Zeb at the Ranch at 10:32. Okay? In just a moment, we're going to send this back over to Wheels, and then, as I said, Dr. History is going to be on the program tomorrow on the program Wednesday at 10:30. Don't forget, we're going to have an Easter service on the radio with Pastor Paul Thompson, and that's going to be at 10:30 tomorrow morning, April 8th. And we will celebrate Easter and what it really means right here on Zeb at the Ranch. Right now, let's go back to the main studio and old Wheels. Take it away. Oh, my. Beautiful, beautiful day. Stick your chin out and say, hello, world. We're not going to give up. We're going to stay tough. Zeb at the Ranch brought to you by Burley Physical Therapy and Rehabilitation at 1263 Bennett Avenue, Suite 2 in Burley. Number to call, 678-1191, helping you get back to being you. And, of course, our friends at Greystone Crossing Independent Senior Living at 1221 21st Street in Heyburn. I urge you, if you're a senior and you're looking for a great place to reside, nice, neat, clean, great folks, great people, look no further. Call this number, 650-4979, 650-4979. Talk to Matt or Kelly Wiggins for an appointment to see the property called Greystone Crossing Senior Living at 1221 21st Street in Heyburn. Believe me, it's true. Seniors living the good life with friends at Greystone Crossing. Want to also remind you about our friends at 7K Metals, and as I've said many, many times on the program, Deanna and I were introduced to 7K Metals about 3-4 months ago, and wow, it's just absolutely an easy, underline the word easy, way to build your financial security and future through silver purchases from 7K Metals. And a couple of our friends are involved in helping you find out more, and that's Lon Hardy at 312-8699 or Sharon Wilmot at 430-3259. Mention my name. They'd be more than happy to spend all the time with you explaining about 7K Metals and silver purchases, a saving opportunity for you and a valued treasure for your loved ones. Do it today. Call about 7K Metals. Right now it's Tuesday, and on the line with us is the old, I can't say enough, old about the history buff, Dr. History. Good morning.
Good morning, Zeb. How you doing today?
I'm good. I have got a book that I latched onto that when we finally get back together in the same studio again, you are going to drool over all the Western stories. It's about 600 pages worth.
Well, that's great. I might could use some of those on the show.
That's why I mentioned it. Okay. What are we talking about today, old buddy?
Well, we're going to talk about the freight wagons, the freighters.
Okay.
So I've got a story here that was an interview that took place in 1933, and the fellow that was introduced, his name was long-haired Charlie Zabel.
Are you kidding?
Now that rings a bell, doesn't it?
Oh, that's a good play on words.
That is. So this is his interview, and so most of what I'm going to be saying is what came from that interview. Now, among those who contributed most toward the building of the West, these early freighters, they deserve a big credit. It was they who carried the supplies and the necessities of life to the outposts of civilization. I mean, clothing, food, tools, heavy machinery. And these were taken hundreds of miles across some pretty rough territory, across streams and rivers and through Indian country. And, there was not a lot of law back then, so you were kind of on your own. Now, one of the last of the overland freighters whose ox teams traveled the Fort Pierre Deadwood Trail in the 1870s and 80s, this guy actually in 1933 still lives in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. You've heard of that place, right?
Many, many times been there.
Okay. So his name is Charlie Zabel, Z-A-B-E-L. Well, he went west in 1877 seeking adventure like thousands of other young men of that time, and some became discouraged and turned back, but good old long-haired Charlie, as they called him, he kept on. But after the discovery of gold in the Black Hills, immigrants flocked there in all manner of ways. Some became quite poverty-stricken. Yankton was the capital of Dakota Territory in 1877, and that was the end of the railroad and kind of the jumping-off place for everybody and anybody, as Charlie puts it. And here he says, quote, "Here I saw all kinds of outfits headed west. Some ox teams, some one mule or a mule and a cow hitched together, and some walking, but everybody hoped to pick up gold in big chunks. They thought it would just be sitting there for the picking.
Mm-hmm.
And some had printed on their wagons, Black Hills or bust, and some of them definitely busted. Now, he goes on, he says, at Yankton, I got my first view of the real West. It was so vast, it bewildered me. I was lucky to get a job as night herder with a freighter going up the Missouri as far as Fort Pierre. And he describes it here with ducks and geese and rabbits and wolves and coyotes and deer, all kinds of wildlife. And he says sometimes we see a band of antelope. But he said, I was anxious to see a buffalo, but they told me all the large herds had been killed off in this region, and I later saw where a whole herd had been shot. Now, there's a guy by the name of Felix LeBlanc took me on, he said, a good-hearted man. He had been a trapping partner of Jim Bridger and could tell the most hair-raising stories of their troubles with the Indians. And he said he could also throw a knife or a hatchet as straight as anybody else could shoot. So I'm still quoting from his interview. It says, our oxen knocked over some Indian burial rocks by rubbing against them, and nothing makes an Indian more angry. In a few days, they caught up with us and were all around camp, riding back and forth and jabbering a lot of talk that nobody could understand, except Felix. Well, he took some knives and tobacco and other things and walked, as he said, unconcernedly out among those Indians, all with their spears and their shields to show how brave they were. And he talked with their chief, and whatever he said must have been good, because they all rode away after that. So now, to give an idea of the freighting business as it was in the 70s, I will describe one of the big outfits, of which there were scores. 3 wagons were coupled together, and 10 yoke of oxen pulled them. The first was the lead wagon, and it carried about 7,000 pounds load. The swing wagon was next with a 5,000-pound load, and the trail wagon last with 3,000 pounds. And he said this was called a team, and there were usually 10 teams to a train. Now he goes on, he says, on the trail we spread out so that each team had fresh ground to roll on, and even with the 4.5-inch tires that cut in hub deep in wet weather, from Fort Pierre to the Cheyenne River was all, as he says, gumbo, and when mixed with long grass, stuck to the wheels in wads.
Wow.
Now, Zeb, I can't hear you very good, so if you have something, just jump right in.
Yeah, I want to jump in just and ask you a question here real quick. You said that they had 10 teams of oxen pulling these 3 wagons. So you're talking about 20 oxen, but you also said that the terrain that they went through was sometimes hub deep on the hubs of the wheels of the wagons. How in the world did even all those oxen pull that amount of weight through that kind of condition?
Well, that's when they had to hook up another set of 10 oxen, sometimes 2 or 3 teams to pull wagons through.
Oh my!
So there were actually the 3 wagons coupled together would have 10 yoke or 20 oxen, and in the whole group, there was maybe 10, so that'd be like 200 oxen.
Oh my!
For the whole 10 teams of 3. Does that make more sense?
It does. You need a little bit more oxen power.
Yes, yeah. So he said we made 12 to 15 miles a day in good weather, and sometimes 5 miles in bad going, but we always got through. And he says at times we had to uncouple and take 1 wagon at a time through a bad stretch, or put on more oxen, which I just mentioned. We forded all the streams from Fort Pierre to Deadwood after crossing the Missouri by ferry. The Cheyenne was the widest river, but not often deep enough to bother us. Now he goes on, he says, at night we camped at some good water hole or stream. The wagons were corralled in a circle and cattle driven out to graze. Now he says, my job was to keep them from getting lost or killed by wolves or stampeding, and to watch things generally. He says, I always had about 200 oxen to watch all night, and just before dawn, I roused them so they could graze some before we got started. So he says, then I rode to camp and would sing out, quote, roll out, bulls on the corral. That's what he would sing out, which would bring the boys out of their blankets. The cattle were driven in then and yoked up, and the drivers cracked their long whips as we pulled out one by one, forming a long line stretching across the prairie. And well, just imagine, it'd be 30 wagons with 200 oxen.
Let me jump in.
Get hot, then stopped for breakfast and stayed in camp until nearly night, as the oxen could not stand the heat very well. The night drive lasted until almost dark, and sometimes we drove by moonlight. But after that, I crawled out of the wagon where I slept and went to work. Now, he says there always was good grass for the cattle, except in the fall when fires burned off large areas. I remember once we made a 20-mile drive through a stretch, and this was hard on the cattle, too. This was where we had an advantage over the horse or mule outfits, as they carried grain along, and this cut down on what they could carry. Even though they were slow, oxen were the best means of transportation for freight in that country. Now, he says the old trading trail went straight west from Fort Pierre to the Black Hills, and he talks about the spruce and the pine that covered, just beautiful area out there. And he said this country still belonged to the Indians, though we were supposed to have a right-of-way a mile wide. That didn't stop some roving band from taking a shot at us once in a while just for fun. And he said we were well-armed and they didn't bother us, but they never missed taking an immigrant outfit with good horses. In fact, he says we had met a man here who had been attacked and his horses run off. They had riddled his wagon with box with bullets, but he had been sleeping some distance away and they missed him. Whether it was Indians or white rustlers with war bonnets, nobody knows. He says, I do not know. There were a lot. He says, I do know there were a lot of white men out there that were 10 times worse than the Indians and often took their disguise to cover what they were doing. There were plenty of honest, square-shooting men in the West, and if you were there that kind, you didn't have any problem. So he goes on, he says, on their first trip, a hard thunderstorm came up one night. The oxen started to drift with it first and then to run. It was so dark I couldn't see my horse's head, and it seemed certain that there was no facing that wind and rain, but we stayed with the herd just the same. When daylight came, I started rounding up what I could of them, and soon came to a stream which was called Bad River. He says, I saw a teepee. There was only one, so I hailed it. An old Indian came out, and by using the few Indian words I had learned, along with a lot of swinging my arms, I made him understand what I wanted. Well, he led me to a ridge where you could see 10 or 15 miles, and most of the oxen were in sight, just grazing. He then motioned me to come to his camp and offered me some kind of stew he was cooking. He said it smelled good to me as I was about famished. After the meal, he brought in a fresh coyote hide and pointed first to it and then to the stew.
Oh.
That's what I'd been eating.
Oh, boy.
The boys helped round up the rest of the cattle, but they couldn't see why I didn't eat well that day. I believe now that old Indian had some other meat there and was only playing a joke on me.
Let me, can you hear me, Doc? Hold on just a second. I got to ask you a question. Let me ask you this. I know we've got a little bit of a delay and you're having trouble hearing, but bear with me just a second. When you talk about these oxen trains, and they were not known and never have been known as speed animals, how many miles a day could those oxen train, how far could they go?
Usually anywhere from 5 to maybe 15 miles in a day.
I see.
Maybe even 20 if they were really doing good. So, they were slow. And he says, he goes on, he says, we were 2 months making that trip and had to kill game constantly or we would have been out of provisions. And antelope made a good breakfast, and they were often mixed in with the cattle in the morning, which afforded us a great concealment. There was hardly a time all day when game or other wildlife was not visible. Now, he says the only way of getting into Deadwood with big outfits was from the north across the Centennial Prairie and through a place called Crook City. And he said if two-legged crooks were meant, it was rightly named. He says it was here that boys sometimes spent their money after being paid off. They unloaded the wagons first and then loaded themselves up with all kinds of red-eye, and it wasn't long before anything was liable to happen, and usually did. The sky was the limit in these towns. And he says on Centennial Prairie, some hide hunters had rounded up a herd of 1,000 buffalo, killed all of them. The carcasses were so close together that you could jump from one to another for a quarter of a mile, and half of the hides were wasted because it froze up before they could harvest them.
That's a
and
shame.
He said it was a useless slaughter. He said it was bad. But he said we had to unload our wagons and get back to Centennial Prairie before night because there was no feed for the cattle anywhere near. They'd rest up and then head back. And he says some days the streets of Deadwood would be crowded with miners coming in for supplies, and in a day or two they would be scattered. If one did get a good pile of pan of gold, there were chances they'd probably lose it. They'd get killed or scalped, and be robbed. But he said there was a guy by the name of Preacher Smith who was killed. He said a friend of mine knew him and had often told him not to travel from camp to camp alone with money on him. He used to preach the gospel on the streets, in saloons, gambling houses, dance halls, or wherever he'd get an audience. The story goes that Calamity Jane took pity on him as he was being jibed, he said, by some men in a saloon. And snatching off the big hat she wore, she shouted, "Come on, boys, shell out. Give the Sky Pilot a lift." Well, a good-sized stake was gathered in both cash and gold dust, but the next day he was found in Boulder Canyon, dead, with his Bible lying on his chest, and the money was gone. Did you have a comment, Zeb?
You know, that town of Deadwood and all of the historical characters that used to go into there or live there, wow, that must have been a den of iniquity.
Oh, yeah. He goes on to say that the year before had been a stirring one in Black Hills. Wild Bill Hickok had come in. There's Buffalo Bill had been in there. He said he saw Buffalo Bill Cody, General Sheridan in Deadwood. So it was, a lot of people were in there. But he said the year of 78 was when the big boom started. It wasn't long before we pulled out to the Black Hills, and our new wagons looked as bad as the old ones, so we ran almost in constant rain. He said that some of the Cheyennes were on the warpath, and there had been a number of people killed. But there's one story, I know we're getting short on time here, but he got to a point where he says, I now owned a team of my own, which was worth about $1,500, but still traveled with a guy by the name of Dougherty. He had bought 60 head of Texas Longhorns to use in place of oxen because they traveled faster. They were wild as deer and ugly. Each one had to be snubbed to a wagon wheel before we could get a yoke on him, and they would fight like tigers all the time. Lord, how those wild steers could buck and fight. I would rather break 2 Broncos than any one of them any time. They had come from the pear thickets and jungles of South Texas and had never seen a rope but once or twice. So he said we put 2 yoke of these steers in the middle of a team and drove around in a circle and finally had them tame enough to travel. Now, I can't imagine that, but so one kind of last story here. He said, to show some of the unexpected hazards we often met with, I will describe one close call we had in crossing the Cheyenne one hot July day in '82. I had 2 teams now, and we're going back empty. The buffalo flies were biting the cattle until the blood showed through the hair. After breakfast, we went swimming, and then we would drive the teams across and take our time, allowing the cattle to cool off also. They would switch their tails in the water and over their backs, chasing off the flies, and it was hard to keep them moving at all. As I rode along beside them, it appeared the river was deeper than usual, and then it dawned on me that it was rising rapidly. The water was soon over their backs, and they were having to swim. There had been a cloud burst up above somewhere, and we were getting the result. Well, he goes on, all I had in the world was tied up in these 2 teams, and when the wagons started slewing around in the current, I thought I was ruined. My horse was swimming too, and all I could do was to shout at my lead cattle, Kid and Rattler, the 2 cattle. They were smart animals, and they pulled ahead for all they were worth. My driver was hanging on the back of one ox and was just able to keep his head above water. All the wagons had tipped over, and the box with our bedding and provisions had floated away. My herder, a young fellow named Ross Waters, had been in that wagon and had jumped out just as it tipped. I thought sure he would be caught under the trucks and killed, but when the wheels came up out of the water, there he was hanging on and spinning around in the air. So he was hanging on to a wagon wheel.
Oh, my.
The oxen finally reached shore, and we snaked the wagon along as far as we could on the bank. It took a week to repair all the damage to the wagons. So, anyway, that was one of his adventures, and he said freighting continued profitable until 1886, when we heard the Northwest Railroad was coming to the Black Hills by way of Valentine, Nebraska. And he says, I knew then our days were numbered.
Absolutely.
So that's kind of the story of this freighter named long-haired Charlie Zabel.
Oh, my goodness sakes. You know, I really appreciate it. I know this is a little difficult to do this program with you in one area, me in the other, but I certainly appreciate your effort, and I love that story. But I'll look forward to next week, and maybe it won't be too much longer before we can get in the same studio and do things like we used to, Dr. History. Thank you for an outstanding story this morning.
You bet. We'll see you next week, Zeb.
All right, my dear friend. Take care. Dr. History on the program with us this morning from an undisclosed location. No, he's at his house. And we certainly appreciate that segment talking about the freighters of the Old West. Thank you very much. Hey, by the way, I want to remind you, too, about our friends over at Patterson's Electronics. I mean, they've got all kinds of electronic needs over there. And for me, an old cowboy, to sit here and talk to you about all the different products and everything, can't do it. I mean, there's products over there electronically. I wouldn't begin to try to tell you what they are or how they work, but they can and they will at Patterson's Electronics, 421 East Main in Burley. Check it out with Curtis and Lorena and the rest of the staff, and they're located, as I said, 421 East Main in Burley. They've got all your electronic needs, home theater systems, video surveillance cameras, all the complete sound systems. Wow. And televisions galore. All of this and more, where they're open Monday through Saturday, 9 to 6. Patterson's Electronics, 421 East Main in Burley. And while I got an opportunity here, before I send it over to Wheels real quick, I want to remind you about Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More, and Jeff and the crew. And you need to call to make an appointment between 9 and 4 daily. And the reason is they're very aware of the coronavirus and keeping everything safe and sane. So call 878-2341. I'll repeat that number again, 878-2341, and make an appointment. And remember, they got all the medical lift chairs, and they're still having 40 to 50% off on all furniture and mattresses. Oh, don't put it off. Call Jeff and his great staff. Excuse me for choking. At Lee's Furniture, Floors, and More, 459 Overland in Burley. That number again to call, 878-2341. Right now, let's send it over to Wheels. We'll be back in about 3 minutes.
And now, back to Zeb at the Ranch on AM 1230 KBAR. To reach Zeb, call 436-2244 or toll free 1-866-927-4587. And now, here is Zeb Bell.
Thank you very much, and welcome back to our last half hour. And I'm very honored to have this man back on my program again. He is a former Idaho House of Representative and also past editor and publisher of the Twin Falls Times-News newspaper, and the author of a brand new book, Traditions and Progress of Southern Idaho Growth Since 1990. And a good morning to Steve Hartkins. Steve, how are you?
Good morning, Zeb. How are you? Beautiful sunny day. I think we're going to get through all of this stuff out there if we all just do what we need to do and stay home and take care of ourselves and take care of our loved ones. We'll get through this. We're Idahoans. We're Americans. We'll get through it.
That's right. I said this morning that now more than ever we need to live each day with courage and be tough and self-assured that God's in control, not us. Stick your chin out and keep going. Right, Steve?
You're absolutely right.
Let me ask you, I was so impressed with an article that you wrote for the newspaper not too long ago, and it really had a lot of facts and figures and absolute truths to it when you wrote the article called "No One Wants to Be Labeled an Unwoke Salmon Racist." Give us a little gist of that story.
Yeah. I enjoyed writing the article. Actually, it was kind of I had read some things by some other columnists, including Jim Jones, and I just felt that, a lot of what they were saying wasn't really right. And I thought, well, I'd take that on as a topic that I'd write about. So that's kind of where that came from.
Well, Steve, I went through it and highlighted and underlined a lot of the various target points that I wanted to discuss this morning. And it seems like it's kind of cyclical. We let it go for a while, and then all of a sudden some people jump up in the environmental movement and everything, and they start yelling and screaming about breaching our dams and in an effort to save the salmon. What are your thoughts about breaching our dams, what it would do, and will it really help save the salmon?
Well, the first thing is it isn't going to happen. So, I don't think any southern Idaho farmer ought to lay awake at night looking at the ceiling worrying about his water supply that's going to go downriver to flush some salmon. It's not going to happen in it at all. There's too much political opposition. And the reason it won't happen is it doesn't make any sense. It's basically a stopgap solution, and it's not proven that it would have any effect. In fact, if anything, it would decimate a lot of Northwest agriculture. Probably $2.3 billion worth of trucking and farming and grain value would be lost. I just can't even imagine politically that it would happen. This is just virtue signaling on the part of people on the West Coast who want to, continually to tell their constituents over there, oh, we're working on saving the poor little salmon, we're working on this, we're working on that. And they shovel tons of money at the various groups, including the tribes and the research studies, and hardly any of it has any positive effect. If anything, it has negative effect, because it diverts attention from the problem that could really be solved, which is to deal with things like, the orcas and the seals and the Indian take and the ocean currents and so forth. Those would really help solve the problem. But we don't go there because that's politically incorrect.
Well, it needs to go there, and somehow we need to implement this thought if people are going to waste our time and waste the legislature's time and other people's time on the idea of breaching dams. Let's talk about the predators. There's so many predators. You just mentioned a few that are at the mouth of the river going into the ocean. And then also, I think there needs to be a complete review of the Indian treaties, because I personally, when I talked to you and asked you to come on this program, I personally, because I rodeoed all over that country, have seen wasting and rotting piles of salmon on the edges of the Columbia and the Snake Rivers. They're just left by the Indian tribes. There's got to be some stop to the wastage.
Well, and I think you're right. I think you're right, Zeb, that there is a lot of misinformation about that particular part of the issue. I looked for some data on actual Indian take, and I can't find any data. You thought the water users might have some, and I haven't checked with them. They probably will do that, but it's a little bit later for me to do. But you're absolutely right. I think we need to look at all solutions, of which tribal take is certainly one of the areas that needs more attention than it's gotten. So I think we're going to need to look at that carefully.
You mentioned, and I've mentioned his name on my program many, many times, because all of a sudden he's turned into a self-proclaimed guru that ought to sit up on Mount Harrison, and we ought to send our kids to him to learn about all the values of the world, and that's former Idaho Supreme Court Justice Jim Jones. He seems to know everything from global warming to the fish to you name it, and a lot of people give him credence, but really he doesn't come out with very concrete facts.
Well, I won't critique Jim here on the program, Zeb. I think sometimes he's pretty good, and sometimes he's not so good on the issues. But that's the way we all are. You're writing a column for every week, and sometimes they're right on, and sometimes you look back at it and you say, well, that wasn't so good. So I'm not going to fault Jim generally. I think on this particular issue, I don't think he's correct. He did respond to my column when it ran in the Times News last week, and he said the same thing that I have said he's saying. That is, basically, he said, well, we've tried everything else, so we may as well try this. Well, that's a pretty heavy price to pay to breach dams that generate
$2.5 billion worth of economic activity, plus all of the water storage, plus the electric generation for something, a solution that we don't know if it's going to work. And we don't really have any evidence that it will work.
Absolutely. And in this day,
to me, that's really the point here.
Absolutely. Stephen, in this day where we're looking at those that are saying that we shouldn't have any gas or diesel-fueled vehicles, that we should only go with mass transportation, we should live in areas that are basically small communes, and people that live in the country shouldn't, they should move to a larger city and cut back on the truck traffic, to take away the barge traffic on that river system absolutely would increase the need for truck and rail to the point where it would be totally environmentally unfriendly. Your thoughts, please.
Well, I think that's exactly right. That the estimates that I saw from a careful study it would take 135,000 more trucks going up and down the highway to take care of that additional grain that is now being shipped by barge. If you think about how much that is, that's like 350 railroad trains, each with 100 cars. So you're looking at a very substantial increase in pollutants from vehicles, plus, of course, the loss of economic value that comes with the long-term storage. It would probably bankrupt a fair number of wheat growers and grain growers as well. That number's a little softer, but the amount of traffic is easy to calculate based on the tonnage. So we're looking at a very substantial increase of tonnage up and down the rail system. I'm not even sure that the big rail systems, Union Pacific or Burlington, could even handle that kind of increase in trains. They're already pretty well stoked up on train traffic as it is. So those are real numbers, I think.
Yeah, and to solidify what you just said, Steve, 58%, and I looked this up, 58% of the United States wheat goes via the river barge system over to the coast, and 60% of the electric power generated because of the dams. That would all be lost if they breach the dams.
Well, I think that's another point, Jeb, as to why this isn't going to happen. Politically, it's a non-starter. Idaho and other western states are never going to sign on to that. And, it's just not going to happen. As I said, it's kind of virtue signaling on the part of West Coast politicians and environmental groups. But it's not going to happen. And so, as I said, I don't think farmers, certainly not in our area, we should not lie awake at night worrying about, oh, boy, they're going to take all my water to flush salmon. It's just not going to happen.
Steve, I
don't think that's a realistic danger at all.
I hope you're correct. We have a caller with a comment. Go ahead, caller, please. You're on the air, please.
Well, just to reiterate what you just said, one barge, it takes 144 railroad cars, 357 semis. The amount of silt and heavy lead and metal that would be released down the river would foul the rivers and kill so many fish that it's not even fathomable. They don't even not know. And the cost of breaching the dams, the damage it will do, just like you said, a majority of our wheat exports to Asia. Well, what would the best place to ship it from? Obviously, ports off the West Coast. Yeah, these people are so stupid, and there are answers to the fish thing. But it's just like with our governor, and I really don't know what to think. But when he has a committee checking on what they're going to do about getting more fish into Idaho, and a majority of it is not good, solid, well-rounded citizens of Idaho, when there's only 3 or 4 of them and the rest of them are from other groups, I wonder how sincere he really is if he's just doing it. He's virtue signaling himself. I'll hang up.
Respond to the caller, please, Steve.
Well, I'm not sure I'd lay the virtue signaling on our governor. I think he's been okay on this issue. I'm not so sure of everybody else, but our caller is correct, and that is that the amount of barge traffic is largely so much now at this point that if we were to release the dams, the lead and other collection silt behind the dams that would flush down the river would actually be more environmental damage than what we have currently going on the dams in the barges. That's absolutely correct. It's not a point that I made in my column, but he's absolutely right about that. I've seen that number somewhere as well, so I appreciate the caller's insight on that point.
Steve, I want to shift gears just for a moment, if I may, and you've been involved in the newspaper business for the lion's share of your life. Have you ever, as long as you've been in the media, seen, heard, or wrote about anything as twisted and deadly as what we're looking at right now with this pandemic of coronavirus here in the United States, and for that matter, the entirety of the world?
Well, no, I think this is a unique event, and hopefully it's a once-in-a-century event, and we were actually not very well prepared for it, but we're catching up and we're ramping up, I think, quite well. I think the President has shown good leadership on this. The reporting from some of the national networks has been, doom and gloom, but I don't think now we're kind of over the hump in some ways. I've been looking at the numbers every day of the incidence rates in Idaho, and they peaked actually last Thursday, Zeb. Friday was less, Saturday was less, Sunday was less than Saturday. We came back up a little bit yesterday, but we're beginning to peak. We've only had 10 fatalities in the state, and about a third of the counties in the state have had no incidences at all. And another 5 or 6 have had less than 5 incidents. And that includes some fairly larger communities like Lewiston and Idaho Falls and Pocatello. They're all relatively modest in terms of actual numbers of cases being confirmed. So that, to me, is a very good sign that our medical community is getting on top of this. And I got to hand it to our frontline first providers, our store workers and our truckers and our service people, who've done just a wonderful job of keeping our society going while this is being solved. These kinds of events happen in human history from time to time, and we're better prepared for this one than we've ever been. And I'm hopeful, as I know everybody is, that we will soon have some vaccines and some cure medicines that can help with some of the devastating effects on this disease. Meanwhile, I'm staying home. I hope you are too.
I haven't started my diesel pickup for 2 weeks. I'm getting great gas mileage.
Yeah, I am too. That's right. Somebody had on Facebook the other day that they're getting 3 weeks to the gallon.
Yeah. Steve, let me ask you this. You know as well as I do, being in the newspaper business and as a state representative, we can't wait too long. We've got to get back to work. Businesses are suffering. People are suffering. Families are suffering. Education is suffering. And are we going to be able to put this train back on the rails in relatively short order? Is this going to be a long-term effect?
I don't think anybody knows really for sure, Zeb. I think our hope is that by the end of the spring, we would be back on track with some very positive news nationally, and some distribution of cures and on top of the medical side of things. Beyond that, it's going to take some time to get certain things back. The school systems are basically shut down for the rest of the year. The restaurants and hotel business, that's going to take a big hit, and there's nothing you can do about that. It's just going to have to come back on its own as people feel more comfortable going out and having dinner or traveling to Yellowstone or wherever. So those things are going to affect us, and they will slowly ramp up over time, I think. I think you see the other sectors doing pretty well. Food processing has held up real well. There was an article this week in the paper that they're They're doing real well. The construction industry is working hard, and mostly because they're outside and they can separate, and so they don't have as much of an issue with it. So I think you're going to see some impacts by sector, and then the loan process from banks to small businesses is certainly going to be a factor. But the Federal Reserve and the banking industry are doing a pretty good job of making sure that people's lines of credit are going to hold, and we'll try to take care of as much as we can through something that's no fault of their own.
Let me ask you one final thought, Steve, as far as the politicization of what's going on. The left is politicizing what's going on as I think, an upfront attack on this administration and personally Donald Trump running for re-election in November. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that's absolutely right, but the left has done that since Donald Trump came on the scene 5 years ago. They've been running against him. And how successful has that been? Not very. His poll numbers keep going up. Poor Biden, he's sitting at home in the basement trying to figure out who his vice president's going to be, who he's going to pick for some, who's going to be feminist to be a vice presidential candidate. And, meanwhile, Trump is out there every day doing what we need to do, and he's leading the country. He's just like Reagan at the Berlin Wall. He's like Churchill on the beach at England. He's like Grant at Gettysburg. He's like Washington at Trenton. Leaders step forward when they're needed, and the Times needed this leader, and the American people are getting the leader that they needed. I'm pleased with what he's doing. I think he's doing fine.
Absolutely. Steve, you're a breath of fresh air to have on the program. I certainly hope you'll consent to coming back in the future. This gentleman is a former Idaho House of Representatives and also past editor and publisher of the Times News. By the way, the new book, Traditions in Progress, how's it going?
It's doing pretty good. I'm working on another one, so it's doing fine. I just keep writing.
Well, I'll tell you what, I haven't finished mine yet. I've been working on it for about 3 years. I'm going to call you and pick your brain a little bit about your dedication, because sometimes I'm lacking that, and I got to sit down and do it. God bless you, Steve Hartkin, for being on the program this morning.
Thank you, Seb. Anytime. You take care. Be careful of yourself now.
All right. Stay well, my friend. Thank you very much. Steve Hartkin, a nice man, and I really enjoy having him on the program this morning, talking about the possibility, and I don't think it's going to happen either, about dam breaching, and then also the coronavirus. We kind of covered a couple of topics there this morning, and I appreciate it. Right now, we've got to cover one other topic, and that's our weather forecast, and that's brought to you by Scarrows Meats, 331 North Road, Jerome. And, of course, you can go to their website, check out all the delicious meats with scarrowsmeats.com. Or give them a call at 324-7657. I mean, we're talking about all the tri-tips, and we're talking about all the different sausages and the different bacons. Oh, my goodness. Marinated pork ribs. My goodness. Bratwurst. List goes on. Great. Scarrows Meats over in Jerome. And right now, here's Gina with the weather.
Sunshine for the rest of the week, which is going to do the soul some good. Here's a look at your weather forecast for the day. We are expecting sunny skies. Slight breeze out of the south-southwest at about 8 miles an hour. Turning to the west by this afternoon, we are expecting a high of 61. Tonight, mostly clear skies with a low of 35. Tomorrow, another beautiful day. Sunny skies with a high of 60. Overnight low of 35. By Thursday, sunny and 68, maybe 70 for Friday. That's a look at your weather forecast for Zeb at the Range.
Oh, I love that. 70 maybe by Friday. That's looking good. Hey, don't forget our friends at Scarrows Meats. Don Scarrow and the crew at 331 North Road, Jerome. Again, that telephone number, 324-7657. Oh, yeah, delicious meats. As a matter of fact, they're changing the way we eat, one delicious bite at a time at Scarrows Meats. I got to tell you, we are expecting to have a home run out of the park tomorrow with our guests on the show. We've got Dave Bego from Indianapolis, Indiana. at 9:06. And then we just made the final thoughts on this yesterday afternoon late. We've got Governor Little coming on from 9:30 to about 10 to 10. Dr. Lamero will be on at 10:06, and then we're going to have that Easter service we've talked to you about at 10:30 with Pastor Paul Thompson. So lots of things cooking for tomorrow. Caller, good morning. Quickly, you're on the air.
Well, I don't know if this sounds like a good idea or not, but I think if you're worried about it, maybe you should stay home. But if not, that doesn't mean we have to get close. But maybe we can get Governor Little to release the people, go to church. If we're careful, maybe even just go out in the, I don't know. I don't, there's such a thing as called herd immunity. We believe that there's more people that have already gotten this and gotten over it. Tucker Carlson says so. Limbaugh says so. I believe in Idaho it's probably ran through the population more than anybody would ever know. And maybe we could get Governor Little to let us go to church on Sunday.
It's. I'm going to ask him about a lot of things regarding the coronavirus. One of the items that I wanted to talk about was not only going to church, but also about what is described as the most important businesses or not, essential or others. And I want a definition on that. But we're going to hear it from him, what he thinks happening and where we're going, and if the curve is flattening out, that type of thing. So he'll be on tomorrow morning at 9:30. Unfortunately, it's only going to be 20 minutes, so we're going to have to go rapid fire. But I appreciate your call, Randy, as I always do.
Exactly, and Blaine County is its own worst enemy, and we had nothing to do with it.
Absolutely. Listen, my friend, I know that you love being outside, and today is going to be just a champion day for the rest of the week, so enjoy. Thanks for calling in. Appreciate it.
Yeah, God is light. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you. We're going to wrap it up and put it back in the box for today. And I want to remind you again that, quickly, I've got to tell you this. The Senior Center on Overland and Burley, don't forget they've resumed their curbside meal service. So if you want a takeout meal tomorrow on Wednesday, you got to call them today at 878-8646 and reserve a meal. Please, they're only $5. Great food. You're really helping the seniors out, so don't forget that. At the Senior Center on Overland, 878-8646. All right? Got you covered. The way things were, the way things ought to be. And the 4 words that mean the most, in God we trust. We'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 8:06. Take care, Wheels.